more than welcome to this, another episode 104 of the Coffee at 11 show, brought to you by Wigwam, and this time supported by Limerick Post, keeping Limerick posted, hashtag Limerick and proud. And it's my great pleasure to introduce you to our guest for today, a man who's zoomed in all the way from New York City, and it is Jacob Cooper, aka Jake to his friends here in the cafe. Jake, just pop in, say hi, cheers us with your coffee mug, and then allow me to introduce you properly.
Hello, this is a coffee mug that has my astrological sign of Taurus on it, and I just had my birthday about a week ago. So,
well, happy birthday to you. Yes, indeed. There's the Zoom applause already wishing you a happy birthday here from Ireland. Lovely to have you here. Let me just tell you a little bit about Jake before we invite him in to have a conversation. Jacob Cooper, we refer to him as Jake, LCSW. Looking forward to Jake to find out what those letters mean. Author, hypnotherapist, psychotherapist and healer. Established several years ago in the work that he's doing today. Works alone, just himself, brings associates as required. And he goes on to say he's a clinical social worker, certified hypnotherapist, reiki practitioner, has had a near-death experience that had a profound impact on his life, and is the author of the recent release, Life After Breath. Lovely title, Life After Breath, How a Brush With Fatality Gave Me a Glimpse of Immortality. And it's available on Amazon, and Eamon will put the links in there in a little while. And then something that we wouldn't know about him here, but we now do. He's a big sports fan and an athlete. And Jake, it is so lovely to have you here in the cafe, and you're very welcome. Thank you for being here. So we tell all of our guests at the very start of each Coffee 11 show that we can Google you, and we will. And Eamon's going to put the links in there, so we'll be checking you out later. We can Google you as you are now. We'd like to invite you to bring us all the way back. Where do you hail from? Bring us back to those early years, if you wouldn't mind. And I know that forms part of your story. Bring us all the way back there, please.
oh, sure. It's the breath is certainly sacred. Sometimes we forget about how sacred the breath is. And sometimes, at least in life, when you lose something, you gain appreciation for it. As we know, you don't know what you got until it's gone, as they say here. So right now, on a global scale, is a time where, people are feeling out of sorts, out of breath, or, what's going on with this pandemic. People are having, issues with their respiratory system. And so, my book has a lot of parallels with today's time. And that's really why I decided to release it a week before Christmas, around that time. I had a book in me, but I felt like this story in a way could help to speak to the times. And why I say that, at the age of 3 years old, I had
just allow me to interrupt you if you don't mind, Jake. We're so looking forward to hearing about the book, and I think you're absolutely right. The timing appears to be universally perfect. And what we'd like to know, if you don't mind, would you bring us back to where were you born? What was the family situation? If you don't mind, we'd just like to get to know our guests a little deeper than the work they do today, please.
Yeah, I was born and raised in a place called Long Island, which is, I'm probably about 45 minutes from New York City on a train ride. Born in a hardworking, middle class and, Orthodox Jewish family. So that's my background. One of 4 kids, So.
And school, what was school like for you? Was school an easy place to be for you?
Yeah, depending on the teacher, depending on the year. But it was, it wasn't different. I didn't go to what's called the public schools. I went to religious school. And so we had a high value on moral principles and ethics. And, we saw, in a way, I guess the religious part saw a bigger picture to life. And that's something that I was, grateful for.
And I'm glad, I'm glad to hear you say that. I think everybody needs a foundation, whether they choose to continue with that foundation as they grow in life. Here in Ireland, the tradition, dare I say it, is most people are raised Catholic. It's just the way our country has been set up over many years. And of course, there's the other prominent faith here in Ireland is the Protestant religion. So we're very aware that it plays an important part in people's lives. So thank you for sharing that. And in terms of the four, you said you're one of four children. Where do you come? Are you the eldest, youngest? Where are you?
I'm the second, and I also have a stepbrother, so I guess technically one of five.
Yeah.
But I'm the second, two brothers, one sister, and consider my other brother another brother too. Yeah.
I love it. Good stuff. I'm one of five too, so we're kindred brothers. There you go.
Yeah.
And I loved what you said earlier. Hardworking family. So those ethics were instilled in you. Those, along with the ethics associated with your faith, I think all of that forms the person. That's exactly why. And thank you for going there. It just allows us a picture into who we're talking to, so that the work, because all of that informs the work. And then here in Ireland, we've got secondary school. I presume in the States it's high school. What was high school like? Was that a different experience for you?
Yeah, I was always, I would say what's called enigmatic. People didn't really know what to make of me. I was always very reserved and quiet, but always a funny guy and kind of like the guy who people would ask about sports questions. But I wasn't very engaged. I was kind of did my own thing. I beat to my own drum always. So I was very private. I had a couple friends around me, but I learned in many ways how to work hard, because if you didn't, you wouldn't survive. So I think in order to survive, there's no way around it. You needed to put in time. So
well done, well done. And clearly you've survived, and survived very well. I loved that, what you just said there. I beat my own drum. That's just fantastic. You're fitting right in here. I'm watching people nodding because I have the great privilege of knowing most of the people that are here in the cafe. And I think that's probably what brought us all together, Jake, and therefore you're very welcome. We all marched to our own individual drums, and we formed a tribe around that. And you said that you're naturally a private person. So on that basis, I want to thank you for sharing with us today in advance of what's coming. And the sports, tell us about the sports. What sports did you play you mentioned you were an athlete?
Yeah, I grew up in a sports family. My grandfather started an indoor tennis clay court, and one of my uncles took it over too. So tennis was a big part of my life. Baseball was big, basketball. I liked football, but I was always pretty small. But I love to watch it. It's not soccer, it's football here. So different than soccer. So those are kind of the sports that I enjoy, but baseball was a big passion of mine, which is a little bit like cricket, I would say, right?
Yeah, a little bit here in Ireland. I was just smiling because you referenced football and you said it's not soccer. So you got football and soccer. So here I'm living in the Midwest in Ireland, right? But I'm from Dublin, and this is important. In Dublin, football is soccer, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Outside of Dublin, football is not soccer.
Yeah.
It's Gaelic football.
Yeah.
So you sort of have to figure out who you're talking with. So in your case, we're talking with you. When you mentioned football, we know it's American football.
Yeah. Please don't mistake me for a soccer fan, because it's just, I mean, I liked playing it as a kid, but I just, I don't know, never gravitated to it after.
Yeah. No, you and me both. The other thing that I want to reference, if I may, is you mentioned baseball, and it's not quite that, and I understand the reference to cricket. We've got this game here in Ireland, which isn't football, and it's not Gaelic football. It's called hurling. And it's a fascinating sport, and reputedly the fastest ball game on earth. You should check it out. Not for the faint-hearted.
I will definitely have to. Yeah.
When I say check it out, don't play it. Don't play it. just watch it.
I'll sit comfortably and watch it on YouTube. Yeah.
Watch it on YouTube. Watch it on YouTube. Jake, lovely stuff. Thank you for going there. That's really useful, and it just gets us to know you who we're talking to. Right. At this moment in time, you've just published a book. And we'll hear about the book in a little while, but it's the background to the book. It's where the book came from that I think we need to go to next, please.
Oh, yes. I always think anything creative, if you look at Mozart, if you look at Michelangelo, anything creative, I think it comes from you in a way, but it really mostly comes through you. And so I think this book really was, in a way channeled. It's something that moved through me. And I think in a way in my own work as a therapist and healer, and other stuff, I'm finding that the oxygen, or what we could really breathe in today's time, is inspiration. And I think really, if you're able to have that, if you're able to generate that, you're able to really be resilient in the face of controversy, challenges, adversity. And so I like to find inspiration as the foundation of my own life, because when you have that, you could keep on going. Well,
And so true. I was just writing notes there. Inspiration is oxygen in today's world. There's a wonderful phrase.
right.
Inspiration is oxygen. We need, yes, indeed. Thank you, Tim. We need it for sure, more than ever, more than ever. But the title of your book is intriguing, clearly, Life After Breath.
Hmm.
Play perhaps on life after death, but it relates to a specific incident in your life, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, there's a term, I guess, called pigeonholing. And so this book has within it my own near-death experience, right? But, and we could talk about that soon, but there's also components of memoir. See, I had this experience at the age of 3 years old. And so for myself, you had this cool experience, but I think the cooler part is the human part. How did that shape you? What stuff did you go through? And so I got very relatable and very transparent in the book, not for purposes of diary or vendetta or anything like that, but rather for people to see themselves and find themselves in their story. Because I think the goal within my near-death experience is not for it to be mine, but to be a subtle reminder of other people that, and I know you're speaking about home as a big part of your culture and, the concept of home, but to me, that's my culture too. We speak the same lingo. I think, it's, as Ram Dass would say, who's a great American spiritual teacher, he passed away around a year or two ago. We're all just walking each other home. And I think finding ways to help out each other to come back to their essence and to remind themselves of what, in a way, this is all about. And sometimes when that foundation is taken, we say to lose yourself, you could find yourself. And that's what happened, that we could get into hopefully soon within the near-death experience.
That is just truly beautiful already. I'm watching the response. This is show 104 of the Coffee to Heaven show, so we're very used to seeing how people respond here in the cafe on screen, and I've been watching all these people nodding. When you mentioned Ram Dass, I was watching all these nodding heads. People delighted that you're here in the cafe. Love the fact that you said it's a human story, and that's exactly what we need today. We need to tell story and keep story going and let people know through our story that they're okay. Their story is different, but their story also matters. I love the fact that you said it's part memoir, but again, that's also really important. So people get to know you through the book, but they get to perhaps release themselves through it. And love that we're all walking each other home. That's just wonderful, wonderful stuff. So you mentioned that an incident happened at age 3, and we go there in your own time, but only in your own time. But I'm curious as to whether that had an impact on what you said earlier, which is you were quite a private person in school.
Yeah, I would say so. For many reasons, but I would say I valued quiet always. I was always someone who valued being an observer of life. I value just taking things in. Some would call that, a phenomenon, at least out here, called a highly sensitive person or introverted in a way. But I valued, the quiet. I valued taking things in. I always, I guess, lived life inside out versus outside in. I was never a leaf in water for a long period of time. I was always, tried to be to the depths of water of life. To me, that satisfied my appetite. You know.
I was about to ask you, what does leaf in water mean, but you explained it beautifully.
A leaf in water, yeah. When you look at a leaf in water, you just, there's an outer flow, there's an outer current, and you just kind of go with it. So, at times you got to do that to really play the game, but, I was always on the bottom, and I tried to have a clear mind, still water, and that part was what I tried to connect to. And I guess that's how the near-death experience, um, helped me. I think in a way, what I learned from my near-death experiences were kind of all a bit of light in a movie screen, that this eternal light is within us. And sometimes how we see ourselves has different blockages of that light, right? And so how we see reality, the nature of it, what we've learned. And at times we're in the body, we forget this light. And, when I had my near-death experience, that light took away all those shadows, and I was just, connected to it. And I think in moments in life, through the process of reduction, through the process of getting still, we could start removing some of those shadows of the light, and the projector could be very clear within the life that we live.
And did you have some guidance on this at an early age, or did you find yourself drifting, for want of a poor term, into this way of being?
Yeah, I say spirituality in the afterlife exists not because of religion, but despite of it. And so I could say that the religious lifestyle, a lot of people just want to tear it down. I think in a way it helped to have a bigger picture of life, that we're not just here to pay the bills, that there's bigger realities at hand, but I saw religion as just a prism of the light and not the light itself. And so I was more connected to the concept of, as a child, I don't go around saying these terms, but it's just something you experience. The best definition of spiritual is just your own unique connection to eternity and finding the depth of life in itself on a subjective basis. It's very personal. And so I tried to do that. Now, regarding teachers and mentors, I think if life isn't teaching you, you're not listening, for good or bad. It's always speaking to you. It always is, but we just gotta listen. There was a great baseball player on the New York Yankees who was kind of like Yoda in Star Wars. If you're familiar with Star Wars, it's kind of like Zen, kind of monk guy. His name is Yogi Berra, and he would say you could learn a lot or most things from just watching or just listening. And so I think that that's important. But I had direct teachers in my life that came in my own backyard that I didn't quite expect. And some of these teachers came in my teen years, and they really helped me, to take empowerment. The one teacher that I had in my life, and the one book that I had in my life was a book by a woman by the name of Betty Eadie called Embraced by the Light. And that was a book on her own near-death experience. And after reading the book, I had this experience, but it's not like I went around saying I had a near-death experience. I didn't have the vocabulary for it. I also had an experience where I felt alone. And so reading her book had me on a quest in a phenomenon to understand the universality that, yes, 5 to 10% of the population was having these occurrences. And so it got me a little bit agitated because I thought I was so special. And I'm like, all right, a lot of people are having this too. But at the same time, it was quite comforting to know that, that I wasn't alone, and, other people had it.
Interesting there. I was smiling when you said it got you quite agitated that all of a sudden you weren't as special as you thought you might have been.
I was, to be frank with you, we all, I guess in a way, some people are different, but for me, it's like, you ask anyone to say something about you, 9 times out of 10, people will say I'm different. Like we all want to, because in a way that's the soul's urge. We all don't want to regurgitate something. We want to add to something. We're all here to add our musical notes to this universal harmony. So
you've got a lovely use of language there. I said it's just lovely to have you here this morning again, seeing all the nodding heads. You touched on something earlier just there about religion, and we say in Wigwam, we say that there's a phrase I came across many years ago, and it was written on a book, a school book, second-hand school book, and it said, "Don't let schooling interfere with your education." And we've taken that and we've turned it into, don't let religion interfere with your spirituality, because it's definitely a problem. I mentioned, you said at the top of the show that you were raised Orthodox Jew. I was raised Catholic here in Ireland. And I mentioned to you the Protestant religion. I remember saying to this friend of mine who's of the Protestant faith, and I said, I'm a practicing Catholic, which I was at the time. And he said, well, if you keep practicing, someday you'll be good enough to be Protestant. And I thought it was such a wonderful, humorous way of looking at it. However, there's been so much damage caused by religion, in particular in this island, this small island that we live on. It's been used as a way of causing strife and horror, indeed. So I think we're all on the same page here. We're not going to let religion interfere with our spirituality, and it's really lovely to have you here. So tell us a little more then, if you don't mind, about what's in the book. What can people expect?
Well, sure. I think the book really starts out with this profound near-death experience, and hopefully we'll get into that. At the time, I had a highly contagious upper respiratory virus, much like what's going on today. It wasn't COVID-19. That wasn't around back then, but this was something called pertussis or whooping cough, which for infants or children, if left untreated, could lead to suffocation, could lead to fatality, and so, I had this virus. So I start off, speaking about, that, but I also discuss on, in a way, what life was like on that from what's, I guess, psychosociological standpoint. You had this experience, how did that impact your life? And so I think in a way, the process of evolution, the process of, living in the body isn't a one-way trajectory where, we're enlightened and then we just go up and up. I think in a way, at times we live our life and sometimes we forget. And then there are instances that put us back on track where we have this foundation again. And I think in a way what's called a shake-up period, where you have something happen to you, whether a loss of a loved one, whether a physical illness, something that happens to you, that in a way, the gear that you were driving your life, that gear doesn't work. And you have to search within, you have to soul search. And I think that that's a very valuable place to be in life, because, otherwise you're just on cruise control. You're not truly living if you're not really digging deep within and you're not coming from that place within. So
another wonderful use of the vernacular, cruise control. I mean, we all know what that means in a car, but it's such a wonderful way of describing how many people are living life. They're on cruise control. Came up before on the Coffee 11 show, somebody was talking about, having 40 years experience in whatever field they had, and we were able to align that with another way of looking at that. Some people can claim 40 years experience, but if you look at it, they had 1 year's experience. They just repeated that 1 year 40 times.
That's a Wayne Dyer quote. If you're familiar with Dr. Wayne Dyer, he would say, I'd rather live 100 years in 1 year 100 times. And so certainly this past year, this felt like 10 to 20 years. So that's an exception, but on a whole, this book has near-death experience, out-of-body experiences, and just that psychosociological standpoint. It's a foundation book in my author journey where I'm almost finished with my second book, which is, this is kind of a lot of a hi and hello, this is me, this is my story, and find yourself in story, where my next book is more, cut to the chase, teaching and lessons, and, all that stuff, and bringing the hereafter into the here now. And so, my name is Jacob, and I think there's a lot in the name. And my near-death experience occurred in a playground on a ladder onto a slide. And so when you think of Jacob from Genesis, you think of Jacob's dream when he saw the angels going up and down the ladder. And it was quite prophetic to have that name. There's a lot within the name. And, I recognize that the ladder is so symbolic of our life. We go up and down, but at the end of the day, there's an eternal ladder. And climbing up each step of our ladder, each step of our evolution within every lifetime, we're able to really embody that light that much more within each lifetime, and go up different steps of transcendence,
Yeah, lovely. And I loved that. I was watching the faces in the cafe when you said, reminded us that your real name is Jacob. You're on screen as Jake. And that this happened on a ladder. That was everybody was blown away by that.
No, in sports, well, yesterday we had the birthday of Willie Mays, one of the greatest baseball players, but at least on our soil, the greatest athlete, as we know, is Michael Jordan. When he was at the University of North Carolina, he was known as Mike Jordan, but he hit a game-winning shot. He said, "I want to be called Michael now."
There you go.
Sometimes you step into the real you, the real, So, Jacob became Israel too, right? Once he wrestled with the, angel, the devil, whatever you call it. So, so sometimes we step into that real part of ourself, the higher self, as we call it.
Wonderful, wonderful. We turn up and we say, "Here am I, send me," and here's Jacob Cooper,
Right.
and you're on a mission. And it's lovely to have you here in Ireland. Is this your first chat show experience in Ireland?
Yes, it is. Yesterday, I did a show. I believe it was in Sweden, but it wasn't like a talk show. So I think the internet is beautiful. I mean, this would have cost thousands of dollars and time and money and staying in hotels, and would have been great to visit, but it makes the world that much smaller.
I was actually looking at that in reverse. I was thinking that would have been wonderful. We could have all arrived to New York. Shelley be there with her tiara.
Yeah, I got a day job that gives me like 2 to 3 weeks a year. It's like,
Yeah.
it's hard to take any time off. It's crazy, but in an ideal reality, I would love to be there. It come to it.
Well, you're welcome anytime. And by the way, just as an aside, I'm working on a second book too with some really interesting publishers that I'd like to introduce you to, based in the UK. I just think your story and how they operate might be of interest. So if you're open to that,
I certainly am. I know my book is with a publisher in Southern California, and the agent that I have is also represented Eckhart Tolle, Neil Donald Walsh. It's a good setup, but within this book, this is kind of like the wisdom of Jacob's ladder kind of thing. So,
well, look, I'm happy to make a connection and just see where that leads.
Thank you.
Come here. How did you get into the work you do today? You took us into school, but how did you end up doing the work you do today?
Yeah, my father also happens to be a clinical social worker, and my mother's also in the helping profession. So I think in a way that really informed me, but elements of my near-death experience did also, and why I say that is, get into specifics, but I had my breath taken away. And once I had that, I was given back the breath of life. And I understood that, on a symbolic level, that was my duty. That was my job. When people are feeling lifeless or breathless, finding ways for people to get that power back, finding ways for people to get the foundation. And so from the ground up, I was very driven to give back what was given to me at the age of 3. And, to help people to feel alive. We could have a soul in a body, and we could have a body without a soul. And so I think it's very important to continuously, be alive in the body and not just, be a vegetable. And so I think the family dynamic helped me, and also the understanding of the soul. And when I say the soul, I think it's a part of us that wants to unify with each other. It's a part of us that wants to be able to take something much more than possessions, and to have a ripple effect on the world around you, and to find ways to understand that helping yourself and helping another is really what it's all about. We're all here to work in cooperation and not competition, So
there's a phrase we use for that. It's co-opetition. And I think it describes it beautifully. You're speaking in a language that I personally subscribe to, and it's come up across the show over the last 104 shows. And it is that I think you believe the same, Jake, that we are in fact spiritual beings experiencing a physical human condition for a number of years, as opposed to physical beings seeking spiritual truth. That's my view, my personal view. Does that fit with you? Am I saying it wrong?
Sure. Facts are always changing. Fact of 100 years ago is a lie today, but truth is eternal. And so I think we're really doing that. And also, um, I think living life open-ended. See, I think when we think of infinite, we think of truth as synonymous with it. And so I would say within truth, we continually expand and elaborate that and understanding the open-endedness of it. And I think that keeps us alive is always being open-minded, open-eyed to really evolving who we are and how we see the nature of reality. Versus to me, a death would be something that's close-ended where you have a cap on it, and that's that. And there's no room to expand or evolve. And so having this near-death experience doesn't give me the keys to everything. It just gives me the wheel at hand and to recognize the value of driving that car.
Well, we're glad that it was just a near-death experience and not that cap that you referred to a moment ago. Tell us about the near-death experience, if you don't mind, please. I'm intrigued, as indeed our cafe audience member.
So I'm going to give my age away, but it was September of 1993. I was the age of 3 years old. September, at least in the Jewish calendar, is synonymous with the highest holidays, and so this was right before what's called Yom Kippur, or Yom is day, and Kippur, it's called the Day of Atonement. And it's a day where you try to clean yourself for your soul before meeting the Creator. You try to apologize, you try to have forgiveness. It's a way of setting a foundation for the new year, so that you have a year of health, year of prosperity. And it's really a time where you're having an intimate moment with the Creator. Little did I know that this was literally going to happen to me, and it wasn't just going to be sitting there in a synagogue praying, but, I was literally about to meet, the Creator. I went to a park with family, friends. It was a beautiful day. But in the car ride, I began to really become a little bit, kind of dizzy, a little bit queasy within the car ride. And, just something felt like something was on the horizon that I couldn't quite touch, within the car ride. And, a couple of days before, I speak about this, nightmare that I remembered that I had, where it just felt like something profound was about to happen. I got out of the car and I went to the playground like I would do with my with my family friends that took me to the park and sibling. And, I went, and climbed the ladder onto the slide. And as I was climbing each rung and each ladder on the slide, my breathing became a lot more belabored and, and resuscitated. And at the top of the slide, I literally began, suffocating due to the deprivation of oxygen. And I had, this breath that we don't even think about, we just kind of do it. We don't even notice it was now being taken from me. And it was the scariest, most traumatic experience that I could possibly have. We say suffocating and we're like, all right, goes one ear out the other, but to actually experience suffocation, was incredibly scary and incredibly isolative. And so as I was suffocating, I felt in a place of disconnect where I wasn't here and I wasn't there. I was just in this place of kind of like eternal suffocating. And I just felt alone within my own suffering. And that felt like an eternity in a way. But after suffocating, I noticed that all parts of my body began to stop functioning. They weren't supported because, as you say, inspiration is the oxygen of the soul, but breath is the oxygen of the body, right? So we need that to continue the body. We need that to be here. Without it, you could go on a ventilator, but, you're not really so much present once the breath is taken from you. You might be in a coma state, and so, the body began to shut down. And kind of like if you're driving the car and you try to start your engine and the car isn't working, you kind of like, all right, what's the point of being in the car? I'm going to go outside of it and check out the engine. And so, for me, that's kind of what I was doing with my body. I was able to really have a higher awareness of my body that I wouldn't be privy to had I gone to medical school, never mind being like a 3-year-old kid. So I was able to really have X-ray understanding of my body as well as components within my brain. And I really do believe we do use a small percentage of our brain. And so from being outside of my body and outside my brain, I was able to have this transparency of it. But moments later, kind of like a power breaker in a home when you're shutting off, all the parts of the home, I just noticed my body was just shutting down one step at a time. And the last part that I was in, was my brain, and I just was able to be aware of the different functional components of it, and and have so much more of an understanding of it that I never had. And moments later, my brain literally, I felt a crack within it, like the large crack sound, and it just felt like like a snap within my brain. And as the saying goes, once my brain cracked open, that's when God came in, as a saying. And I felt myself racing down this insane tunnel, as if you were to go on a powerful roller coaster at an infinite rate, upwards and upwards, never ending. And, and I felt myself going on an infinite journey at an infinite speed, and that journey was within, and so I entered this prism of light, after racing on this tunnel and going at an infinite speed. And I noticed myself that this reality that I was experiencing, yes, felt a million miles away, but it was also here too. If I could explain, it was an overlaying of this energy. To say that the other side is in one place, but not here, would be a limited, infinite. It would make it finite. And so I understood this reality felt like infinitely further from this reality, but also right here at the same time too. And so it's hard to pinpoint where exactly infinite is, but it's all around us. It's inside of us. It's coming through us. Moments later, I felt what I would like to best describe as the palace of, the best I'd describe it as the palace of the all that ever is and all that ever was. Or you could say the center of the universe, or God, if you use those terms. But, to me, this was a potent light that I was seeing from this palace, and I was experiencing this behind my head, seeing this in the right side of my brain, which, the right side represents the creativity, the left side is more the analytical side. And so I think when we think of creativity, I think we're actually really channeling that creative side through the right part of our brain. It's filtering through the brain, the filter of life, really. And so this light was so profound, and this energy was so euphoric, and so beyond anything that I experienced in this body, that I almost had to shield myself from it. It was such a powerful transition. It's as if you take a fish and just throw it into a different body of water. There was an acclimation period. It was familiar, but it was such a profound diametric shift of reality, that I still had profound thoughts of this was insane. This is far beyond anything that I experienced at 3 years old within the body. Moments later, I began to become aware of what I could best describe as a Christ consciousness. Now, this wasn't Jesus standing in front of me, but it was beyond that. It was more of a vibrational frequency of the expression of Christ. It was the field of that energy, and it was a very comforting, familiar energy. But it was as if this high, intense pitch that I was experiencing, almost kind of like the climax of this reality, the highest, almost like the highest possible point with no end. And so in our bodies, we're used to just a cap on our climax, whether that through food, whether that through intimacy, whatever it is, we're always limited in a way with how good we could feel with the body. And from being outside the body, you just recognize the term infinite was infinite. There was no limit with infinite in any way, whether that be time, experience, awareness. And then moments later, I saw myself on, the slide, and I saw literally my two guardian angels, or spiritual guides, were the most magnificent beings that I ever looked at, literally pushing my body down the slide. And they were male and female entity. And at the time, I knew who they were, their names, and I felt a sense of embarrassment, not from their end, but from my end, that I forgot that they were with me this whole time, part of me. And moments later, I was on the floor and quite irresponsive to people who were calling my name, and the frustrating element of being able to see them, but they couldn't see me, was something that I dealt with. And I saw my body on the ground, but I felt my form, and I felt a form outside of my body to the side of it. And I could really feel that I had this form. And, in moments later, I was able to see, so much more awareness that I had of people around me that I wasn't privy to. I could see their electromagnetic fields and angels around them. And I was aware of, I think we're aware at times on a superficial level of people, but we're not aware of people on a soul level basis in terms of who they are and why they're here and what are some of their, karmic lessons. And so I just was having a lot more intelligence, to the beauty of themselves. And so I know, there's other parts of the near-death experience, but I don't want to go on. Someone I think in the chat room asked, are we all capable of remembering this? I would say the afterlife can never leave us, even if we felt that we left it. It is forever embedded in the doorways of our own soul, our own heart. And I think in a way we're all capable of it. I think we're also capable of memory. And that inspired me to get into the work of past life regression. Obviously there's controversy behind my near-death experience. And, when there's controversy, that's a good thing. That means that you're causing people to think. And I like that word, but in a sense that people will say you're 3 years old. I don't remember anything at 3 years old.
Well, if I may come in at risk of interrupting the flow.
Please do.
A beautiful story and beautifully told. I was watching again the expressions in the cafe, and at a purely physiological level, I wrote that question at 3 question mark. I wrote it down here in my notes, right? But I just wrote it to remind myself to ask the question, not to pick holes in your story, but because at a physiological level, the questioning of others makes perfect sense. How could you possibly remember that at 3? However, if we accept, and I'm willing for one to accept absolute truth in what you said, well, then it makes perfect sense, because in that moment you were in tune with the infinite beingness of everything. And therefore it makes perfect sense that all of those details, so beautifully related, I should say, would be fully embedded in your memory, in your infinite memory. So beautiful story.
Yeah. Well, our psychological and intellectual development is finite, is measurable, but wisdom is infinite. Wisdom is eternal. And so this was an experience that went far beyond my left brain or my intellectual components. This was an experience, that was beyond my brain. And it was a part that experienced beyond my body. It was the eternal soul that I experienced. And so I think a lot of people, they mistake the body with the soul. A lot of people, when you ask to point at themselves, they'll point to the body. And I just think really the body is just the vehicle for our expression within this lifetime. And it could be a great ally or a great barrier to who you are, depending on how open you are within your body to allow the soul to come through. Like we said before, that light analogy, is the body a barrier, or is the body something that allows a clean filter between your own eternal light to come into this finite reality?
It's just lovely. Jacob, it's been beautiful having you here in the cafe and relating your story. We need to move on. We need to go to the Princess Shelley part of the Coffee 11 show, which is apparently many people's favorite part of the show. You're about to find out why. Before we do that, I'm going to ask you 2 quick questions, if I may. And then, because I want to bring Princess Shelley in to find out what's been going on in the chat room, but we'll also invite some of our guests in the cafe here to have a conversation with you, if we may perhaps ask a question. So before we go there, if you don't mind, what are you taking with you from COVID, Jake?
Thank goodness I haven't gotten COVID, so I haven't taken COVID with me. But, I would say the whole world today is having a near-death experience. And why I say that is what I experienced, that moment of foundation taken away, that moment where I felt as if the rug that I was standing on was pulled, and being in this place of in between, neither here nor there, forces people to move the needle of their foundation. where in a way with what you're working on in that car, right, is not working, all of a sudden you have to find, like I said, the new gear. And I think in a way it's forcing people to reevaluate themselves, the nature of reality, what's important, and almost this grasp of this world that we were living in, gone in a way. And that allows a new tree to open. See, it would be very hard for new trees to come in if we had every tree on the planet that didn't die. And so we have one tree to die to have a new tree to be born. If we had every human being that never died on the planet, there would be no square foot for it. So I think for a new change to happen, an old kind of ideological reference has to be removed. And I think ultimately the goal is for people, hopefully at the very least, to understand what's important. I think when finite is expedited, it forces us to focus on our lives and what's really important, and to stop being so focused on the short term versus being more emphasized on the long term, bigger purpose. I learned from my near-death experience that this spirit thing that I had, wasn't just something monopolized by people in monks or people in churches, people that we see as holy. Rather, those people are just reminders that we have that same stuff in us, just as Christ did in his life, that we, in a way, have that divine spark, that eternal spark within ourselves. But I think in a way to understand that this near-death experience, and hopefully with COVID, to understand the lack of randomness. The fact of the matter is that this is a life made by an infinite creator with infinite intelligence, far greater than our own. And I think it's important for people to trust in principles of the infinite wisdom, infinite grace of eternity versus our own finite judgments, and trust in faith versus our own fears.
Yeah, fantastic. Yes, indeed. Heart emojis and bula bus, as we say here in Ireland, which means clapping of hands, which is just wonderful. Thank you for that lovely response. And then the last question before we go to Princess Shelley is, you meet a friend, or you come across a friend who is struggling for whatever reason because of what they're going through in COVID. What would your piece of advice be?
Yeah, I mean, one thing about COVID is there's a unifying component, right? But I always say, it's a similar storm, but everyone's in a different boat. Everyone's got their own unique situation. For someone to lose 3 or 4 family members, it's not the same situation as, someone who got sick by it, got very affected, but you can't compare. Everyone's suffering is subjective. For some people having 3 or 4 family members, they're able to, move on, in their own way, but obviously that shakes them up. But I would say for people struggling is to understand the illusion of being alone, the illusion of suffering. Suffering is synonymous with feeling alone and feeling as if we're trapped, much like I had within my near-death experience and suffocation. And I think really it's important that, sometimes for us to be able to see the stars, the darkness has to be there. And I think understanding that through seeing darkness, we could remember that light. And, I think we could all look back on our lives and seeing what we call the dark night of the soul, which I believe was a phrase made by someone like a priest or something. I forget who named that, but it was like, but in a way, that darkness allows us to come back to the light, and we're able to see it better, evolve it better. And we're able to understand that no matter what we're going through, the inner light inside of us is infinitely greater than the finite challenges in front of us. And sometimes, wisdom is within us all the time, but we lose sight of that. And I think really this lifetime is very much about integrating the infinite wisdom that we have to enhance our evolution. And so sometimes we're given tricks of the mind or tests, but it's all a part of learning how to come back to home and coming back to truth within stuff that, could really offset ourselves.
Wonderful stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, Jacob Cooper. Jacob, stay where you are there. We're going to go over to Princess Shelley, see what's been going on in the cafe. Thanks, Shell.
Thank you.
Thank you, Colm, and thank you, Jake. Wow. As Colm mentioned a few times there, Jake, your use of your lexicon is just stunning. The way I've talked so many lovely notes, the way you said wisdom is far beyond your intellectual components. Wisdom is infinite. And you said we're all here to add our musical notes to the universal harmony. And if life isn't teaching you something, then you're just not listening. So many lovely statements that I just was compelled to write down. So thank you for such a beautifully embroidered interview today in our little cafe. You've gifted us so many lovely statements that will be forever in my notebook here. So thank you for that. It's been a quiet cafe this morning, which I think that's a reflection of how captivated everybody is. We're all listening intently, and it always interests me when everybody's just been stuck listening to how beautifully you told your story. We kicked off with Eamon saying, as we were introduced to you, Jake, at the top of the show, and Colm introduced your bio to us, and he said, I love you already, man. You're my cup of tea. So that's Eamon. I could see him really getting very excited and animated when Colm was introducing you to us, because I knew that you both were the same tribe, essentially. And then we went on to hear, Jake, about your sporting background. And Tim Kelly said, hurling has nothing to do with drinking too much Guinness. So we're talking about the hurling there. And I think we have found the video there was, I think it was an American comedian's feedback on the hurling game. So I think between the team, we did find something there. I'm sure that'll be shared with you a little bit later. Kat will send it to you. So, and then Eamon said hurling has everything to do with drinking too much Guinness. And then Sarah Ward, Jake, who she's one of the most regulars, if you like, in the Coffee at 11 show. She's there every morning to help Colm open up and welcome us all in. And you said at one stage, you said inspiration is oxygen in today's world. And Sarah has recently just published her book, and she said, well said, Jake, and she put in the emojis there with the two hands and the smiling face. So, and I saw a lot of people nod when you shared that little pearl of wisdom, as we like to refer to it as. And it was at that point then, Jake, where Eamon popped in the link to your book for the life after breath. So fatality and immortality. So that was the link for the book.
Well,
so,
it's fading out, but yes. Yeah. The book has actually a ladder and angels on it.
Oh, wow. Excellent. Well, the link is there, guys. So do check that out and have a little look at it. Eamon then liked as well when you said we're just walking each other home. You have to absolutely surrender to another energy with total certainty in advance. So thanks for that comment, Eamon. And Donal, who is another regular in the cafe, you can give Jake a wave there, Donal. Donal said religion as a prism of the light and not the light itself. And he was saying how bringing the hereafter into the here and now. Again, Jake, more appreciation for that beautiful vernacular that you've shared with us on the Coffee at 11 show today. Donal really appreciate that. I can see him nodding, bringing the hereafter into the here and now, lovely language. So he really liked that. James liked, and I saw the chuckle actually, James liked when Colm had said that straddling cooperation and competition, and he hadn't heard of cooperation. I wasn't sure would I even be able to pronounce it. He hasn't heard that one, but it resonates. And I even saw before you popped that in, James, that that's why we love about the cafe, the leveling of engagement, and we get to know our regulars. You can see what bits they appreciate and what bits that tickle them, if you like. So James then said, you said you liked a bit of controversy, Jake. You know, you were saying that you like to provoke people into that thinking. And James said, yeah, controversy means you're making someone think. Yep. So yeah, he liked what you said there. So Eamon's popped in all your links, Jake, your Amazon book link and your Instagram and your Facebook. So absolutely loves that. And Eamon said, we are only lonely when we don't love the one that we are with.
Thank you so much. I'm just, you know, when I'm very quiet, I'm just something very magical going on. I'm just sitting here drinking it in. Thank you so much for this morning. It's just, yeah, I'm just nodding it. Yeah, all the way through. I suppose my question, given what you're talking about, and really appreciate your time and where you're coming from. I get it. Would you maybe touch on a favorite, let's say a favorite practice, prayer, meditation? What would be your first kind of go-to space thing, let's say?
Oh, sure. You know, a lot of people are very, you know, they feel very excluded when they hear a near-death experience or talk, in the sense that they feel that they come from a place of privilege, or you had this thing, so it's very easy for you to do it. But for me, I haven't had this. And, you know, what I would say is, you know, meditation, when you're getting quiet, it's that same feeling that you could have with intimacy with eternity. It's an understanding that you touch a part of yourself far beyond thought, time, space, and you just know that when you touch this part of yourself, you know that that is who you are, the sacred eternal observer. And you just know that that part can never be taken from you. And so, for myself, I view meditation, there's many forms of it, mindfulness, transcendental, but in a way, there's many paths up to the mountain, but, this similar goal in mind of expanding consciousness and touching to that part that you just know is you. And I always say we don't belong to earth and all of the struggle and all of this stuff. We belong to the kingdom of heaven. We're just here very short, and we're here to bring that into this world, and so I find it's very important when you're feeling very world weary to recharge yourself through meditation. And that's what I try to do on a regular basis, because we have no problem recharging the body, taking care of the body, but at times there might be a neglect of the soul, and I think meditation is a great way to recharge it.
Perfect response for young Smith there, I'd expect.
Yeah. Little drops of life, it's good to be able to kind of check back in and sit with that and remember what we forget. Yeah. Thanks, Jake. Wonderful.
Thank you, Eamon. Donald O'Leary, would you like to comment?
Yes, I'd like to say that, Jake, I found that to be a necklace of petals of wisdom. I'd like to quote you back to two other things I wrote down, and maybe you can expand on them a little more. You said, in a way it comes from us, but mostly it comes through us. Did you hear that, Jake?
Yes.
And also you said, in losing ourselves, we find ourselves, or something that, in losing ourselves, we find ourselves, or something like that.
Yeah.
Do you mean in, I don't know, you may not have heard of St. Francis of Assisi.
Oh, yes. I'm familiar with his prayer. But, I would say at all points in the moment, life is speaking to us in our deepest feelings and highest of thoughts. And I think it's very important to listen to that. Each and every day I sit quietly and I say, what do I not want to hear, but what do I need to hear? And every day there's different messages that I get. And I share those daily messages on social media platforms and stages. But, I think in a way, I said it earlier, wisdom is infinite. There's no limit of it. And so I think each and every day is a reminder how we could look at life through a different set of eyes. And, the moment we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change, as Wayne Dyer would say. And so, when we're not able to see, finding ways to be seen, as the prayer would say, when you're not able to really see, give me the strength to be able to see. When you're not able to hear, give me the strength to be here. And I think wisdom, when we're struggling, when we are suffering, allows us to find a new gear, a new way. So we let go of suffering, and suffering is a gateway in many ways for wisdom. We're very much open, and when we're thriving, it's at times hard to listen, but I think when we're at a place of suffering, people will be more likely to just at times be open to different solutions and different answers at times. And so, but when we hold on to a part of ourselves, and that's what we hold on to, there's little room for growth. Once you're willing to be able to lose that, a new shell of yourself is able to form. And so we could look at parts of our life, right? When we were able to reinvent ourselves, we take that part of ourselves that we held on to, and we find a way for that to go into something else, something different, in a new chapter. And that's what I kind of found is the exciting part of being alive is living while living, and having that infinite creative force that is who we are express ourselves in each and every day in new ways.
Tim, I believe you have a question. Tim, will you unmute there and ask Jake a question direct?
Thank you, Shelley. Absolutely. Jake, thank you so much for your time this morning. It's been really eye-opening, I think. It's been an absolute insight. I have a number of memories from before 3 years old myself, and I've often wondered if I was the only one, because people say you shouldn't remember that far back, but I do. And I tell you, I had an experience only a couple of months ago where I had a wee chat with Archangel Michael, and I asked him to put his blue cloak around me, and I physically felt the cloak coming around me. I could feel it on my skin, and it blew my mind away. It opened my heart, and it's fantastic and wonderful that you're sharing your story and opening people's minds open to what's there in life. There's so much more in this universe than what science will have us know. And it was 1899, Charles Joule said, everything that can be invented has been invented. And it's just a little piece to show that we literally don't know what we don't know. And I really hope your book reaches as many people as possible. The people here in the cafe and the 17 million people that might actually see this video on the recording, fingers crossed, it moves people the way our audience has been moved here today. So I just wanted to say thank you for sharing your story with us today.
Wow. Yeah, you're getting the cafe at 11. You don't get the coffee at 11 applause for your terrible joke, Tim, but certainly when you feel like that. And I was going to tease you for us. Katrina just popped a comment in there with his Britney Spears microphone. I was going to ask you for like a little rendition of "Oops, I Did It Again" or something, but you came in with such a beautiful, beautiful comment. Wasn't that a lovely, lovely feedback to hear, Jake? Wasn't it?
You know, it is. I think there's a statement that we're here to bring heaven on earth, but I say we are literally parts of heaven here on earth. And, you know, I think part of it is, you know, and this is chronicled later in my near-death experience, when I experience spiritual guides and angels, and understand that, you know, this very much lifetime is about learning how to understand other people's evolution, other people's progress, you know, is the real goal. We're all here to support each other. And, you know, that's it. It's looking up at someone and not down at someone, and finding ways to see their own beauty and to see different ways that they could integrate that. And so for you guys to say that you are all angels, really, I might have to fire my own spiritual guides and hire you guys. No.
Excellent, excellent stuff. That's great, Jake. Thank you so much. So much wisdom. And with that, I am going to hand back over to our host. Thank you so much for today and for being here. And indeed, everybody, for all your comments and your questions. Back to you, Colin.
Thank you, Shelley. And Jake, I mentioned earlier that you were going to witness most people's favorite part of the show is the Princess Shelley bit. And it's where,
Yeah.
because what happens is you and I are in conversation. I was well impressed earlier, by the way, that you actually picked up what was going on in the chat, because I never see what's going on in the chat. But Shelley is then able to just bring that to life and let you know what people have been saying and the impact that you're having here. And Tim Kelly, wow, where did that come from, man? Wonderful stuff. But such a lovely intervention and building upon what Jacob has shared with us here today. So let me just bring today's show to a close, if I may. I would like to thank Princess Shelley for producing today's show. Big heart emoji, one and all. Eamon Smith, our resident monk, for keeping us safe and secure. Tim Kelly for his awful Friday joke, but for also helping us keep us safe and secure in the cafe. And of course, Katrina O'Brien, editor-in-chief, the real boss, who's going to get this and turn it into something magical for onward dissemination to an audience approaching 18 million potential souls. And we just put it out there. The universe will decide who needs to stumble across this. We're not in charge of that stuff. And then, of course, the final word today goes to our very special guest, who's a friend of the cafe for life now, an honorary Irishman, and that is Jacob Cooper. Jacob Cooper, namaste.
Thank you.